Follow Paddy Power on Snapchat. The username is @ThePaddyPower, and we promise there won't be any boring snaps about gigs, the weather, or the gym.
Hello and welcome along to the GAA Postcast with me, David Jennings, and Paddy Ahern from our sponsors, Paddy Power. Unfortunately, we've had technological demons in the system, and Joe Sheridan, who is due to join us to talk through all the weekend's action, is not on the line, unfortunately. So you're going to have to make do with myself and Paddy for the duration of the show. If it changes, we could have him back on, so we'll await that with bated breath. Paddy, before we get stuck into this weekend's action, let's have a quick chat about last weekend, and I have to hold my hands up again. Yes, they're up high in the air. Once again, I got Galway wrong. Now, you're a proud Galway man, and I have been crucifying this Galway team for the last 2 years. Twitter exploded when they beat Kerry at the weekend, and I think everybody is just hoping that I will keep tipping against Galway. Tell people how good this Galway team is, Paddy.
Well, I just hope people were watching the match, because if you looked at the World Cup final, it was on the same time. There was probably more scores in the World Cup final than there was in the match at one stage, because I think it was about 3-3 into 25 minutes or half an hour of the game. As a spectacle, it wasn't anything like it wasn't a picture of beauty or anything like that, but at the end of the day, that's kind of what this Galway team's bread and butter is about. If you looked at them going back for the last couple of years since Kevin Walsh has taken over, that the consistency wasn't really there. So I would take these kind of low-scoring defensive style wins every day of the week rather than games like Roscommon last year in Pearse Stadium, than the Tipperary quarter-final in 2016. What they've basically improved year on year since he's been there. They've brought in a defensive structure which basically looks like it's the best in the country now at the minute. They've won the last 4 Connacht minor titles, so like there is a lot of talent coming through, and you can see the talent coming through with the likes of Sean Andy O'Kelly getting starts. Peter Cook came on the other day. There's other guys like Kane Darcy who are kind of waiting in the wings. They have a little bit of strength and depth. They have scorers in Ian Burke, in Damon Comer, and in Shane Walsh that's pretty much as good as is in the country. And as I said, that as a defensive unit, they look as solid as a rock. So it's hard not to get excited. As a Galway man, I don't know if my liver or my head would be able to recover if we did do the double. It would be a very, very expensive winter, I'd put it that way. But, you know, it's as a Galway man, it's very, very hard not to get excited.
Yeah, if Galway do the double this year, I can see them winning the hurling. But, like, fair enough, I have got Galway wrong. But I still cannot see them winning an All-Ireland senior football title. They're just not good enough, Paddy. They're just not good enough. Now, tell people who want to back them what price they are and basically how the market has changed. Give us a full show of the 8 teams left in the 2018 All-Ireland Senior Football Championship.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they're further enough. They're far enough down in their development to actually beat Dublin and win an All-Ireland. But we'll say since last weekend, I think we had Dublin hovering around the kind of 4 to 6, 8 to 13 mark. Kerry would have been, we'll say, the heirs to the throne in many people's eyes, and that's completely kind of blown the market the wrong way for competitive reasons, I suppose. So Dublin are 1-2, Kerry are 6-1, alongside Galway at the minute at 6-1, Tyrone are 9-1, Donegal are 18-1, Monaghan are 22-1, and Kildare are 100-1, and Roscommon are 250-1 after last week's capitulation against Tyrone.
Okay, and very quickly before we move on to this weekend's matches, if I was to give you a free bet on this market, who would it go on?
The free bet.
You've already got one on Kerry, I think.
If I had a free bet, I'd probably back Tyrone. I think they can still qualify from that group, win a semi-final, and then we'll know what they're all about more this weekend, which we'll discuss later on as to how they're going to match up against Dublin. But yeah, obviously Dublin are the most likely winners, but there's still 1 or 2 question marks, I think, over them in comparison to other years. There mightn't be anyone to beat them, but if I had a free bet, I'd throw on Tyrone.
Okay, I'd actually at 6-1. I think maybe there might be a slight overreaction to Kerry, given that they played on a nice rink, and I just wonder, on a dry day, I think you would have seen a different game last Sunday. But time will tell. So moving on to this weekend's action, starting off at 5 o'clock in Dr. Hyde Park on Saturday, live on Sky Sports. It is Roscommon v Donegal, and this market has changed utterly in the last 6 days, Paddy.
Yeah, it's Roscommon have been fired out as from last week's performance, which was really really poor, to be fair. Roscommon are 130, the draw is 9-1. Donegal are 3-10. Roscommon +4 is 11-10. The handicap draw is 10-1, and Donegal -4 is 5-6.
And when this market was opened up, obviously before the first round of Super 8s, what was the betting on it?
Yeah, it was 7-4, 15-8. I think Roscommon. I think we kind of
Wow.
settled on 15-8 Roscommon, which obviously you had it last weekend. We didn't like. You don't really expect to see much money on the games that are further down the line because people are learning every week. But it does seem a big move of the dial now to me.
Yeah, absolutely. It certainly does. And one of my greatest traits, and a lot of people have vouched for this, is forgiveness. And there are 3 teams this weekend playing in the Super 8s that were beaten last weekend that I can see putting up a much bigger fight this weekend. Donegal, Kildare and Kerry have certainly been overlooked in the market. And this Roscommon team, Paddy, like they look so good in the game against Armagh, which was a different type of game to the Tyrone game. But like, what can we expect from Roscommon this weekend? Is Kevin McStay completely going to change his game plan?
I don't think it's going to change it all that much. I mean, like the one thing about GAA and GAA betting in particular is that people have very, very short memories. So we'll say even if you kind of bring the hurling into it at the start of the year, Kilkenny don't look too impressive in the first couple of league games, and everyone says they're absolutely useless. They win a league, and now they're giants that they should be second favourites, maybe favourites for the All-Ireland, and then they lose another game, they're useless again. Like Roscommon and I'd say Kerry later on will definitely fall into this bracket. So they're not as good as people think they are when they're beating Armagh. There's an argument, and they're definitely not as bad as they were last weekend. It's not that long ago since in the same venue they looked like for a large part of the time they had the beaten of Galway, who ended up, going beating Kerry last week. They lost by 4 points in the end, but the 4 points definitely flattered Galway because at half time, Roscommon kind of looked in control and then they just forgot their shooting boots in the second half. I think it's going to be a kind of a similar-ish game to that. It's very hard, like you're kind of wrangling in between because I think we just we kind of spoke a little bit off air about how Dr. Hyde is one of the lowest scoring grounds in the country, and you don't generally see a massive score put up there. But then you look at the style, the way the two play, and it is, it's tricky enough to see it being a very, very low scoring game. But I think that I don't see it going spiral out in control like we saw in Croke Park last week. I think at home Roscommon are going to be a different animal. And to me, the +4, it's pretty generous looking. I don't think like Donegal they did well to stay within the handicap last week, but I wasn't massively impressed with them. I think a lot of people were pretty let down by Dublin on the day. I think this Donegal team as well, they still have a little bit to prove, and I wouldn't if you consider Roscommon did go off kind of 9-4, 5-2 at home against Galway and lost by 3 or 4. I don't think we're saying, there's nobody going around the country saying that Donegal are better than Galway now, and you're looking at a 4-point handicap and 10-3 and bigger around in Roscommon. It seems plenty big to me now.
Yeah, I certainly agree. And let's call a spade a spade. Kev McStay is no idiot, right? And he's looking this week and he's saying, right, we conceded 4-24 to Tyrone. There is no way that he's going to say, right lads, we're going to play identically to how we played last Saturday night in Croke Park. There's going to be little tweaks here and there. All right, they're not going to bring 15 players behind the ball, but there will certainly be tweaks. The weather, it's obviously a wet morning here this morning. I just don't know. Obviously, the forecast's not too bad, but you just wonder, is it going to be as good as the last couple of weeks? And when you factor all those things in, surely the bet in this match, Paddy Ahern, is Donegal under 21.5 points. Because a score like 2-14, 1-16, 1-17, that could be good enough to win this game convincingly. And with that in mind, I think yous are gone too high maybe in the Donegal point spread.
Yeah, perhaps. The one thing about Donegal in Ulster, and it was kind of frustrating last week because Donegal definitely could have scored more against Dublin, and they were kind of, they kind of nearly plotted their own downfall in that kind of sense that they seemed to be so preoccupied with getting hammered that they actually forgot what they were good at in Ulster, which was putting up really, really big scores. So I don't have it at hand now, but I think like their average score in Ulster must have been about 22 points. Just
yeah,
off the
and
top
it's
of my
funny
head.
in Ulster they scored 2 goals in every game. They got 220 against Cavan, 216 against Derry, 222 against Down, and 218 against Fermanagh. So they're pretty. Their scores were always between 216 and 222. So that proves how high scoring they are. But is it a case as well that perhaps last weekend everything was put into that Dublin match? They had plenty of time to prepare. They needed to start the Super 8s in style, and you just wonder that first half performance, where they really put it up to Dublin. If Jamie Brown had got that goal instead of blazing it wide, it would have made it a little more interesting. I just wonder, it's very hard to go to Croke Park against the All-Ireland champions and then to Dr. Hyde Park against Roscommon. It's a completely different kettle of fish, and I think you'll see a completely different game. I think this could be low enough scoring compared to what we're used to with this Donegal team, and I just wonder, is it going to be as pleasant, as aesthetically pleasing as other Donegal matches?
I think a lot of it depends on what Donegal's approach to the match is going to be. If they go back to the basics and go back to what they were good at in Ulster, and when you have kind of Owen Ball Gallagher and like basically even Paddy McGrath as well was getting up, and like he was in the full forward position in that Ulster final. Like, they have runners all over the pitch. If Neil McGee doesn't play, they have 14 guys which are basically going to pop up in between the 45 and kind of the 21 at some stage with maybe a scoring chance. That's what they're doing in Ulster, and that's what they're good at. Like, they have, like, every single one of their players are, they probably play a little bit further out the field for their clubs. They're all well able to take a score. They didn't really do that against Dublin last week. They didn't commit enough forward because I think they were just so terrified of Shipp and hammering, and I'd say Bonner was just kind of worried about what that would do if they went into Croke Park. Like, if Dublin beat them by 12, 13 points, they still have to go out, and they have to go out the following week, and then they have to go 2 weeks after that, and he kind of didn't want them to be demoralised or whatever. I think Roscommon can kind of prove that they'll let you score at the same time as well, but Roscommon are going to have to score as well. Like, if it does go, like, obviously if Donegal go up anywhere near the expected, well, we have them at 21. If they go anywhere over that, you'd worry for Roscommon, because I don't think Roscommon are going to score that much. So, like, it ties into what you're tipping for the match. If you do think that Roscommon have a chance, then then you'd be well between your rights tipping the Donegal unders anyway.
Yeah, okay, so it's decision time. I'm going to put forward 3 bets on this match. I'm going to go under 36.5 total points at 5-6 Paddy Power, under 21.5 Donegal points at 4-6 at Paddy Power, and I'm going to go under 2.5 goals at 8-11 with Paddy Power. So I'm throwing all my eggs into a low scoring basket, Paddy. What's the best bets on the coupon for you?
Yeah, I think Roscommon +4, 11-10 is pretty much what's around. I would have a little bit. I'd say whatever your staking plan is, if you wanted half a stake on Roscommon to win the match, I think there's a price out there that to me looks a bit too big. So I'd go with Roscommon +4. I think for the first goal score, I think ourselves maybe sometimes included are a little bit disrespectful to Kieran Murtagh. Considering the amount of goal chances he gets and the amount of goals he actually scores for Roscommon, I think he's definitely worth a bet around 10-11-1. And man of the match, I can't get away from how well Ryan McHugh is playing. I was kind of, sometimes you look around, you try and be clever and pick a bigger one for this. He'd probably be favoured for man of the match, but he should be clear favourite on them. Like, the way he's playing, I don't think Roscommon are really going to have anyone that's going to be able to mark him, certainly not for 70 minutes. The way he zips around, the way he can take a score, it's proved last week as well. One of the scores he got out on the right hand side against Dublin is as good as you'll see in the country. I think he's a cracking bet for man of the match, because I just think this game's going to suit him down to you'd imagine.
I don't know, it'll be interesting. Will they try and put somebody like David Murray or Sean McDermott? I don't know, it's going to be strange. Even Niall McInerney might be asked.
Possibly, but you're taking them far out the field as well. Like McHugh is just, he drifts everywhere. He'll be in the half back line for a while. He'll drift in for scores as well. So I think Roscommon are going to choose maybe to have those guys closer to goal and protected a bit more. But to me, I didn't see anyone obvious that they're going to have to be able to mark him really.
Okay, well, I'm going to go for, to keep with my team, I'm going to go for no goal scorer at 8-1 with Paddy Power. And my man of the match selection, given if we're hoping that maybe Roscommon might be able to scrape an unlikely win, I just thought, given the way he's been played, I thought Enda Smith at 12-1 was probably a little bit of value in that one. So that is Roscommon at Donegal kicking off week 2 of the Super 8s at 5 o'clock in Dr. Hyde Park on Saturday. But the big one, of course, yes, we all know it is Healy Park in Omagh for the Battle of Omagh as Tyrone welcome All-Ireland champions Dublin. And if this game was priced up maybe a month ago, it would have looked very differently, Paddy, although Dublin are still strong favourites.
Yeah, they still are. Tyrone are 3-1. The draw is 9-1. Dublin are 1-3. Tyrone +4 is 5-6. The handicap draw is 10-1. And Dublin -4 is 11-10.
Now, looking at Dublin last week, Paddy, the one thing people said was they weren't overly impressive. They weren't easy on the eye. But given that Kieran Kilkenny didn't play well, the one bloody time I tipped him to get man of the match, he is a stinker. And given Paul Mannion didn't play well, Conor Callan didn't play well, given that all these players weren't as effective as usual, they still won convincingly, always looked like winning, always looked like they had plenty in the tank. They brought on Paul Flynn, who kicked 2 points. They brought on Cormac Costello. Like, there seems to be just any amount of gears in this Dublin team, and it just, even in the second half when there was 4 points in it, if Donegal got a goal, I just think Dublin would have went down and maybe got a goal or chipped on a point or two. They just seem to have that ability to completely control a game. And I am Tyrone's biggest fan, but I just don't see how this Tyrone team are going to beat Dublin. For all that, I think it will be hugely competitive.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a close one. Like, if you, as you mentioned with Dublin last week, I think I suppose there's two ways of looking at it, but if I was a Dublin supporter, the thing I'd be happiest with from last week was that they were still comprehensively bailed out when, as you say, Fenton didn't exactly set the world. Like, he came into the game in the second half, but all their big players that you wanted to mention out were substandard by their own high standards. Like, what won the game last week was the new guys, Niall Scully. He was there last year, but he's still relatively new in terms of that Dublin team. Niall Scully, Brian Howard, which is he's a new guy from this year, and then the bench as well, which we've been saying it for years. But like, there was kind of a little bit of a thought process, we'll say, when you take the Bernard Brogan injury out of it, and when you take Jim McConnelly kind of gone, that maybe is that Dublin bench as potent as, you know, is it going to strike fear into the hearts of everyone when you see these guys coming on in 55 minutes? But you still emptied out Kevin McManaman, and you still ended up, as you say, Paul Flynn to come on, score 2 points, Cormac Costello to come on, score 2 points. So like, you still have Colin Basquel there as well if you need it, and you've a bit of a change in tack if you want Owen O'Gara to come on and just kind of cause a bit of consternation in there. So like, that bench is still, it's still strong as, like, it's still pretty much as strong as you get in the country, I think. In terms of this weekend, it's a really, like, I'm looking forward to it big time, because I think we're going to get the game that everyone expected we would have got in Croke Park last year. So we were left, like, everyone was left.
You had to mention it, Paddy. You had to mention it, didn't you? The day when my small little bit of dignity just went, where I tipped Tyrone to beat Dublin and was pretty confident heading to Croke Park that day. Well, it was embarrassing.
But look at, I mean, the amount of people who were tipping Tyrone for that last year, like, it was the one, you know, we always have a bit of, when in Dublin games, we always generally have a liability on the team they're playing for the match, because they're much bigger prices, and then we kind of, like, everyone's back in Dublin on the handicap on the opposite side. So you always just, like, whenever you're looking at a Dublin handicap, you're looking at the minus, and it's just red basically for every game. Apart from Tyrone last year, it got a bit out of control in running, fair enough, but like, everybody was tipping Tyrone. Like, there was Tyrone, it was that kind of 4, I think it was 1-2, 4-9 last year, and everyone was saying there's no way these Tyrone guys can get hammered, all this kind of stuff. And it just fell apart. Like, it completely fell apart in the day. Tyrone didn't really know what they were doing, and they proved that they weren't really up to the level. But I think this is a completely different game when you're down at home in Omagh when you're taking Dublin out of like the comfort of Croke Park for the likes of Brian Howard to score his 2 points, for the likes of the guys coming off the bench, for the likes of Niall Scully. They can just go back into a certain process that if ever they're in trouble, they're playing in their home venue. They're so used to the pitch. Every player is comfortable there. Like, the one thing about this weekend is if that happens again, if Kilkenny, if Fenton, if Johnny Cooper, if James McCarthy, if Philly McMahon, if they play the way they did last week in Omagh, Tyrone are going to beat them, because it's going to be a completely different game that they're used to. It's going to be pretty hostile. It's going to be very physical, I think, from both sides. Tyrone are going to be wild up for it, but you'd have to expect Dublin's first kind of excursion outside of Croke Park. They're going to want to prove a point as well. I think they will prove a point, but I think Tyrone will put it up to them. I can kind of see Tyrone starting well. I can see them getting in Dublin's faces. I can see them scoring. I can see them with more of a scoring threat than they had last year as well, but I can see Dublin winning the game still. Yeah,
I'd echo those thoughts. There's a couple of things that interest me here. I was listening to Brian McGuigan on News Talk last night. He was on with Dennis Bastick and they were talking about 2006 and things, and they were just talking about the pitch at Omagh and what's it like, and he was saying, well, it's similar dimensions to Croke Park, but he seemed to suggest that the touchline had been brought in quite a considerable amount of yards. It's going to be tighter, and listening to him and like my own thoughts on this is that when Conor Callaghan got that goal last year, it was completely game over. There was this Tyrone team couldn't come from behind. So Mickey Hart will surely have ingrained in his players to keep this competitive for at least 35 minutes. Then the game can kind of take it into a rhythm in the second half after the break. But in the first half, I think you will see possibly the most conservative Tyrone performance you've seen so far this year. And the one thing he has to do, and there's going to be people absolutely screaming down their, what would you listen to podcasts on now? That I suppose your iPhone or whatever, if you're listening to it on your computer, people are going to be screaming at me here. But Mickey Hart has to give up the kickouts. He just has to. 100%. Let Dublin win every kick out. Let Cluxton tip it out to Johnny Cooper. Let him tip it out 10 yards. Just give them up, because there's no way, if Tyrone push up on the kickouts with Brian Fenton in midfield, they are not in a position to get into their shape quick enough to stop the Dublin attacks if they are playing with, just say, if they're set up to push up on the kickouts 15 on 15. I think Mickey Hart needs to give up the kickouts, and I think he will, and I think you'll see a defensive Tyrone strategy in the first half. I think you're going to see more numbers behind the ball than you've seen all year. I think Niall Sludden will push back. I think you'll see even the likes of McShane coming back, and I think they'll try and bottle up the area between 45 and 65. I think you'll see that bottled up, and for that reason I think the game mightn't open up until the second half. I think it could be 5-4, 6-5, 6-all. I'd be surprised if either team got to 10 points by half time, and for that reason the bet of the weekend is for the second half to be the highest scoring half in Tyrone v Dublin. And Paddy, I think that is 5-6 with yourselves.
Yeah, 5-6 for the second half being the highest scoring. Yeah.
Can you back me up here?
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it more so as well with when teams kind of tend to struggle. Like, it's funny enough, this is what used to happen, I think, when Gavin just kind of came into the role, is you see the bench coming on and the legs kind of stretching out. It's not really happening that much anymore, because like, it was so strange to see them playing keep ball for 10 minutes against Donegal last year, whereas, just in previous years they would have just attacked that and they just kind of would have tried to go on and win by 11 and 12. At the minute they'd seem to be just happy to win matches, but like that is the kind of the reason they were doing that was because they figured they'd the game won and they were 4 or 5 up anyway. If what we're saying is true, it probably won't come to that. Like, you can see it being kind of a level game or very, very tight on 55-60 minutes, so you're actually going to be bringing on fellas to pull away and actually win the game when Tyrone are going to be tired as well, because Tyrone are one of the fittest teams in the country, but Dublin are the fittest. So like, you definitely do see kind of petrol tanks emptying in the last 10-15 minutes. And yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I would have thought, I don't know, I think it might just be a tight enough game the whole way through, but I couldn't really put you off the second half either at 5-6.
Yeah, and would you agree that maybe potentially Tyrone need to give up the kickouts?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't see like their own game isn't based on guys coming out winning skyscrapers, the kickouts. Like they don't really have that much around the middle in comparison to normal teams, and it's especially in comparison to Dublin. So yeah, I can see them kind of doing that. As you say, I mean that's going to pretty much set up an absolutely brutal spectacle, really. And to in a way, it's sometimes with Dublin it can kind of play into their hands as well, because you just have this lateral ball going kind of from wing to wing, and you have one or two runners up, and Dublin will just keep the ball until they have an opportunity to shoot. It's kind of a bit of a dangerous game, but I mean you have to try something, because this Dublin team for the last couple of years, they can kind of play it both ways. I think Mayo really have kind of shown that the one way that you can beat Dublin is with defenders who kind of read the ball well, who kind of cut out. Like if you saw that All-Ireland final last year, the way Chris Barrett was just getting in front of ball and getting interceptions. I think Tyrone could be quite good at that as well, and they will have enough men back. So that's probably is their best chance of winning the match.
Yeah.
The bet I filed down on, and I fancy it quite a bit as well, as I think, as it kind of alluded to before, the Tyrone are going to thunder into them. I think it might be a tight enough first half, and you could see kind of Tyrone coming out on top of it. So I thought Tyrone half-time, Dublin full time were a decent bet. It's 4-1 with us, a little bit bigger around, but that was the one bet on the coupon. I thought that like you can see kind of Tyrone going in leading by a point or two and then losing the match by 3 or 4, I would have thought.
I like the sound of that one.
Yeah, for the first goal, I think it's going to be interesting to see a Dublin team. I think that Conor Callaghan might miss out this week because he was very, very wasteful last week.
Shite is the word you're looking for there.
Yeah, pretty much. That's another word for it. He all year.
Although I did say that Shane O'Donnell had been shite all year, and then he came out and had the game of his life. So maybe players are listening to the GAA Postcast. You never know, and maybe this is their motivation.
Yeah, well, whoever was picking the man of the match wasn't listening to it, because somehow Podge got it ahead of him and he was brilliant, I thought. But anyway, I if you want to use the word shite, then fair enough, because he hasn't been good all year, and he not to the standards that Gavin is looking for anyway. And when there's people breathing down his neck, I think he might get a bit of a kick up the arse. I'd say he might be dropped this week.
And Paul Mannion is another that
he
will
was
be very
lucky
to keep his place. And I was one of the founding members of the fan club.
Definitely, yeah. I think Mannion will keep his place ahead of Con, and I think you'll be looking for a backlash off Mannion as well. He's still he was bad last weekend, but he's still one of the biggest goal threats they have. So he was kind of the first goal scorer selection that I had at around 9 or 10-1. And my man of the match was I was nearly going to pick Fenton, just because I think they are going to target him with those clucks and kickouts, and he will win the world of ball. But I think this game is pretty much set up for Philly McMahon. I'd say he's licking his lips at it all week. He's going into a cauldron of just Northies just shouting at him for 70 minutes, and people are going to get in his face, and he loves that. Like, that is going to be his bread and butter, and I think he's going to thrive in it as well. I'd say you're going to get a big price in Philly Mac this week, and I think he's going to be a good shout for man of the match.
Philly McMahon for man of the match, 25-1. Yes, we have no Joe Sheridan on the line. We have no hurling, but we have a 25-1 poke from Paddy Ahern from Paddy Power for Philly McMahon at 25-1 for man of the match. Now, I'm going to continue my doom and gloom, because I'm going to tip no goal scorer, given that I think it's going to be very, very tight. And I just think these prices in games that you think are going to be pretty defensive, I think the no goal scorer can be a little bit of value, and you certainly get a run for your money. Unlike like in the Connacht final, was it when Galway got their goal deep into stoppage time?
Oh, Jesus, yeah.
That was a killer. But anyway, 13-2 no goal scorer. And for man of the match, I just wonder, given how bad he was last weekend, surely you're going to see a reaction from Kieran Kilkenny, and it is the type of game I think that'll suit him. And I just wonder, will he, like he was shooting on spec last weekend, I don't think you're going to see similar from Kieran Kilkenny this weekend. So I'm going to go play it safe with Kieran Kilkenny once again, in the hope that he can have a better game this weekend. So that is the 2 Super 8 showdowns on Saturday taken care of. Join us after the break, where we'll be looking at Sunday's action.
Success ain't earned, it's bought. That's why at Paddy Power, we paid the big bucks for the best tech nerds in the world to develop our new, fastest ever app. Download the new app from the App Store or Play Store now. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
Welcome back to this week's GAA Postcast with me, David Jennings, and Paddy Ahern from our sponsors, Paddy Power. It is off to Fortress Newbridge on Sunday at 2 o'clock as Kildare welcome Galway. Two teams who had very different results last weekend. A hugely important match in the Super 8s. 9-4 Kildare, 15-2 to draw, 1-2 Galway. Kildare +2, 11-10. The draw plus with Galway with a 2-point handicap is 9-1 and Galway -2 at 10-11. Paddy Ahern, this could be tight, but are you staying loyal to this Galway team?
Yeah, I am going to stay loyal to this Galway team, and there's a couple of reasons. So this is the type of game with this Galway team in the last couple of years that you'll be having nightmares about, because it's coming straight after a high. It's straight after a kind of a marquee win that has kind of followed Kevin Walsh around, I think, since that year he was Sligo manager, where they went out and beat Mayo and they beat Galway and then somehow fell to one of the worst Roscommon teams in history. He's shown form with that at Galway the last couple of years, but I think they're too defensively solid now to succumb to something like that. And the thing is, I think they're more aware of it now as well. So Shane Walsh was actually interviewed during the week and he alluded to that as well. He was like, in past we have got cocky that kind of up ourselves a little bit after big wins, but we kind of know what the end goal is now. And the other thing is, like, you just look at them, they're proven to be just one of the hardest teams in the country to actually beat as well. So, like, you're going back to the league, and you're going back to the league final as well. And the league final was a 4-point handicap. But Dublin couldn't really pull away from them just because of how defensively kind of solid they are. There's another worry with Kildare as well, very few people are talking about this week, is that this is their 5th week in the bounce. So, and it's not really in the terms of a Monaghan kind of 5 weeks in the bounce where you're tipping away. Like, they had a fairly easy game against Fermanagh, but even if you look at the other games, like the Longford game was Anton Butt. I mean, they kind of had to pull away in the last couple of minutes. The Mayo game was a phenomenal effort, and then it would have been pretty crushing for them to kind of go and lose by a point then to Monaghan last week. They're big players as well. Kevin Feely has been pretty quiet because apparently he's been carrying around this calf injury that he just can't get rid of, because the simple reason is he hasn't got time to get rid of it when you're playing week in, week out for 5 weeks. There's talk about Daniel Flynn has a little bit of a quad niggle. Like, this isn't going to keep fellas out of games, but they're still there and they still don't have full time to recover from it. So I like the fact that it's in Newbridge, the fact that the adrenaline is going to be up. I think it's coming against Kildare a small little bit. The likelihood is that with Galway as well, like, Galway are going to have something to play for in that last game, no matter what it is, no matter what the result is in Clonus. I think that they still know that there's a threat that they could lose to Monaghan at home. Kerry could beat Monaghan, and then Kerry have the real kind of simple. Perhaps they could have had the dead rubber down there. So Galway are going to be clued in enough to be concentrated enough to win this. I think they're defensively strong. I think they have a good head-to-head record against Kildare as well, going back to the league final last year. They went down to Newbridge this year and beat them handy enough in the league when Galway were effectively through to the final as well. I know it's a different Kildare team that's going to come out, but I think Galway are stronger than Kildare. Whether they'll hammer them as well is yet to be seen, but I don't think they're going to lose the match.
Yeah, unfortunately, my run of tipping against Galway, I think, might end here. I think Galway probably win. Like, I don't know what they're going to win by, and I don't know if they're going to blow Kildare away. I don't think they will. But as you said, it's very hard to kind of fancy a team strongly to beat Galway, given the way they play and just given how solid they are. And, like, it's seldom you see a team where they are so well organised and so well drilled, and they're able to cover space so effectively. And apart from David Clifford last weekend, there wasn't too many carry forwards that looked even remotely like themselves. So I think Galway will scrape through once again. As regards a bet on the match, Paddy, it's tricky enough to find something that you can be confident about.
Yeah, pretty much. That's like so. It's one of the most confusing of the week, we'll say, in the sense of, is it like in terms. I don't think it's going to be all that high scoring. If it is high scoring, I'd say it could go the way of Galway kind of kicking clear. because I just don't see them conceding all that much. My actual best bet on the match coupon was going to be a man of the match bet, because
Wow.
I think Ian Burke was phenomenal last weekend.
I'm telling your missus, because you're having an affair with this fella.
This fella, well, to be fair, like I thought he was one of the best on show. Like last week for Galway, he didn't even get nominated for man of the match.
Yeah,
but
I couldn't believe that.
Like since there's an argument that he nearly won that game against Mayo as well, because he didn't start. So obviously I think he's based in Dublin as well. He was with Corofin for a long time, so he missed a lot of the league. But his shooting, his movement, the way he's able to the ball that goes into him is obviously good, but like he's so effective at kind of getting out in front of his man, winning the ball, either laying it off or turning and shooting on the run as well. I think he's in cracking form, and I'd say it's a game that's going to suit him. I'd say Peter Kelly will probably pick him up, but then you're looking
David
at
Hyland. No, I thought David Hyland
maybe David Hyland, but then I mean, I wouldn't describe it as Kildare's most solid line in the field either, when you're going to have to be looking after Shane. Like somebody's going to have to follow Shane Walsh as well. Somebody's going to have to look after Comer. I think Burke could kind of benefit from that as well, from that kind of ball in, that if he's left to 1-on-1, like he'll have plenty of space. And I think I think it'll be interesting to see what goes up in the next couple of days for man of the match, but I wouldn't like to be laying anything over the 10s that we have in sight anyway. Yeah, that's for sure.
10-1, you are certainly keeping Ian Burke on side, and now we know why. And first goal scorer, will you be trying to complete the double with Mr. Burke?
Yeah, I think the one I thought was maybe slightly big if you considered his league form, and he hasn't really set the world alight in Championship, but he worked very hard last week. But I still think he is a natural forward, so I think Eamon Brannigan has a decent shot. I think he's around 16-1 for the first goal. He scored he was Galway's highest goal scorer during the league, so I think there is going to be a day where he'll catch fire, and I think it could be Sunday. So Brannigan at 16-1 would be my idea first goal scorer.
Okay, I actually thought Brannigan had a great chance in that market as well, so I'm going to echo your thoughts there on Brannigan for first goal scorer. As regards man of the match, this is tricky. This is very tricky. I think Galway are going to win, so I think it will be a Galway player. And Shane Walsh and Damien Comer are very short in the market, 5-1 and 6-1, so I think we have to look outside the box. So I am going to have a go at Adrian Varley at 16-1. I thought maybe there might be a little bit of value there. So that is Kildare and Galway, 2 o'clock on Sunday. So the fourth and final Super 8 encounter this weekend. It is off to Clonus, 4 o'clock on Sunday. Monaghan welcome Kerry, who are out to restore their reputation after last week's dismal performance in Croke Park in losing to Galway. Paddy, the loss by 3 points, it could have been a lot more. Galway were the better side throughout. Where are we with this Kerry team? And let's have some prices first of all.
Yeah, first of all, the prices. Monaghan are 9-4, the draw is 15-2, Kerry are 1-2. Monaghan plus 3 is 10-11, the handicap draw at 3 points is 9-1, and Kerry minus 3 is 11-10. Yeah, that Clifford goal at the end, like I just hope it doesn't come back to kind of bite Galway, because I think it's kind of ensuring whatever happens up in Clonus, it's kind of ensuring that there's going to be a lot to play for in that group. I think that's actually Group 1 in the last game of that group, because you're obviously looking to get out of the group, but everybody's going to be looking to avoid Dublin until the final as well, if they can at all possible. So you could see a scenario where Kerry win this weekend against Monaghan, then they go down and beat Kildare, and then whatever happens, Galway might just have a little bit of a slip, and if they lose to Monaghan in Pearse Stadium, then it comes down to points difference, and the likelihood is if Kerry are going to be playing Kildare, who are out at that stage, that they'd put up a really big score in Killarney. So then the points difference, the win by 3 points, actually matters hugely to Galway, or whatever they do this weekend as well. So I hope it doesn't come to that really, but you just hope that Clifford goal mightn't come back and bite them, even though last week was a great performance. In terms of Kerry, I think Kerry last week was, I think the conditions was worth about 5 points in that match.
Totally agree.
There was it was just, and obviously the way Galway played as well, so they just dragged it down. Like as I said, it was 3-all after 27, 28 minutes, or close enough anyway from my recollection. I remember there was a couple of times as well in that first half. There was a time when Clifford just kind of burned somebody out in the right hand side, and he looked like he was gone. And in that Munster final or in any other game, he would have been gone, and the ball just kind of slips out of his hands, and next thing Galway get men back, and like that's a score gone right there. I can remember that happened about 3 times. It happened to Guinea as well in the first half. So you could say that like the conditions would have been completely against Kerry. Now that's not to say that they shouldn't have kind of folded the way they did fold, and their approach to the game wasn't exactly what you'd expect from a Kerry team either, but I think it's going to be really, really different this week. I imagine that Fitzmaurice will go back to what he's used to. I would say all the old guard are going to come out for one last show. I would say Shane Enright is going to start. He was kind of touch and go, I think, last week, but I think he might be fit for this week. Mark Griffin might start. Donegal Walsh should probably start. Donaghy is definitely going to play a part, I think, at some stage. I just don't know when it is. He definitely could start. Like, there were people are suggesting that he could start with 14 as back and actually play around the middle of the field. But I think he'd give Kerry massive, massive lift. I think these guys could kind of bring on the likes of Gavin White, who's going to kind of keep his place even after last week. Clifford, hard to know what James had done, who I think he might just still start him. But I reckon that it's such a massive game for Kerry. Like, if you think about it as well, we were talking about the big difference in the price of Roscommon. The difference in price of this had Kerry just won as well. You would have had fellas piling into Kerry as well, so they could be as short as they could have been as short as 2-7, 1-4 for this match. I reckon they'll beat Monaghan. I think they'll restore some pride. I don't think they'll hammer them by any means, but I think that Kerry are going to win.
Now, Paddy, our job is obviously to analyse games and see where games could be won and lost and to look in depth into things. But sometimes the answer is straight in front of us. And is this not just a simple case of Kerry being a far better side than Monaghan?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to come across as disrespecting Monaghan either, because I'll
disrespect Monaghan. Monaghan are not All-Ireland contenders. Kerry are. It's as simple as that. Monaghan are not going to be winning All-Ireland this year. They've got an ageing team who are terrifically well drilled by Malachy O'Rourke, who have done remarkably well with their resources in the last decade or so. But when they get to the top level against the Kerrys, against the Dublins, they are simply not good enough. And while they have home advantage in Clonus, that obviously does count for a lot. But it's just Kerry have better players. They've better forwards. Obviously, they don't have a Conor McManus, potentially. Maybe Paul Geaney isn't quite at that level. But overall, I think this Kerry team are a better team than Monaghan. I think they will win easily. I know you think that it will be tight. I think you'll see a backlash from Kerry. And, you're talking about a Kerry team that blew away Cork. Obviously, we can't read too much into this, but they still are All-Ireland contenders in my book. We cannot read too much into that game last weekend. In the lashings of rain against a team who are built to perform brilliantly in those conditions. I just think everything went against Kerry last weekend. I think you'll see a backlash, and I think Kerry won't be 6-1 for the All-Ireland after this match.
Yeah, well, that's a lot depends on the performance, but yeah, like definitely that's the thing about, as I was saying as well, because if Kerry win this match, then they still have, they've every chance of topping the group. Really, they'd be relying on Monaghan. Monaghan aren't going to be a huge price down in Pearse Stadium, because they're still obviously going to have something to play for as well, no matter what happens this weekend. So yeah, you could see Kerry being shorter as well. I think what Kerry are going to need to do is, like, they're basically going to have to try and win the game around midfield, I think. Which they didn't really do last week. Galway kind of packed it out a little bit more, but the likes of David Moran is going to have to stand up, and it's kind of unfair on David Moran because he has been so good for Kerry in big games. I think you're going to see the real David Moran this weekend. Depending on who's playing with him, I don't know if Jack Barry going to survive, but if he does, you'd expect a backlash. You could have Anthony Marr there, although I don't think they're going to bring. See, Anthony Marr, when they brought him on, I don't think he really added anything, so he's probably the kind of guy that you nearly have to start, or else you're not going to use him at all. And then there's the added fact that Donaghy might come into the game as well. So I think midfield is going to be absolutely huge. That's where they kind of got the foothold against Cork as well, to create the point scoring chances for the inside line, which, regardless of last week with the conditions they were playing in, they're still one of the most potent forward lines in the country. Like, if they can get ball into Guinea, if they can get ball into O'Donoghue, who got a lot of stick last week, but I think he is going to start this week, and Clifford as well, kind of just shows that he is at that level now, if anyone even doubted, even with them losing. Yeah, I think Kerry are going to score enough to win the game, and I'm just not too sure. Like, it's hard to know. Maybe JC Foley is going to mark McManus, but I think the best thing they can do with McManus is double up on him and just hope that they score enough down the other end to win the match.
Absolutely. Well, given that I think Kerry could win this game convincingly, I'm going to tip up Kerry over 1.5 goals at 13-8 with Paddy Power. Paddy, what's your best bet on the coupon?
I thought Kerry half-time, full-time. Like I do expect them to bring a performance. Like you have to see it from Fitzmaurice's point of view. You do need to see them tearing into this game, and I think there's odds against Kerry half-time, full-time. It's not like if they're leading at half-time they're going to let up for 1 second. Like they'll have definitely been hurting from last week. So I think half-time, full-time is a decent bet.
And first goal scorer, man of the match?
Yeah, first goal scorer is going to go with Paul Geaney. He's probably still Kerry's best player. He's probably still one of the best finishers in the country. So he's favoured for first goal, so it's kind of unoriginal, but I think he's a worthy favourite, and he'd be the one I'd be backing for it anyway.
What price are we talking there? 6-1.
Yeah, 5 or 6 to 1. Yeah. And for man of the match, I think we didn't see as much. I've been pretty impressed with Gavin White from what I've seen of him. He wasn't great last week, but apart from Clifford, what Kerry player was, I'd say he might get a bit of a backlash, and I think people can kind of forget about him. He could be a decent price, and he's like, it might be a game that'll kind of suit him because he'll be all over the place because he'll be following Monaghan fellas. But if he gets kind of in the scoring zone, he'll be able to pop balls off. He'll be able to have a shot himself. So I think Gavin White from wing back would be a decent enough shout for man of the match.
16-1 with Paddy Power, and my two selections for first goal scorer and man of the match. For man of the match this weekend, I just think, given the confidence of how well he played last weekend, I'm going to go for David Clifford at 10-1 for man of the match, and I'm also going to go Clifford first goal scorer. Finished his goal really well. I know the game was done and dusted, but he's a confidence player who's a rare talent. So it is David Clifford for man of the match and first goal scorer for myself. So all that's left to do now this week is to reveal our best bets of the weekend.
This will not be beaten.
So Paddy, I'm going to give you the honour this week. Your best bet. Now we have to get the pressure's on us this week. There's only 2 of us. Okay, people will be doing doubles. They want to get this up, right? So we both agreed before the show that we put significant effort into this, and these had to be absolute certainties. So no losers, please. Paddy Ahern, your best bet of the weekend.
Oh, this is probably the most risky one I've ever gone for, but I reckon whatever price you can get for Ryan McHugh for man of the match in Donegal, Roscommon, I think he's going to be everywhere. I can't think of a game that's going to suit him more, and I think he's a cracking bet.
Paddy, did you listen to me, Paddy? We need certainties for listeners who are disappointed that Joe Sheridan is not on. We have no Aidan Fogarty because there's no hurling on. We need certainties, but yours is Ryan McHugh to get man of the match.
Yeah, big price certainties better than short price certainties.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to do the complete opposite. I am going to say that the second half to be the highest scoring half in Tyrone v Dublin. I think that should be 1-2, not 5-6, because I think it's only going to open up after the break, especially if Tyrone do fall behind. So there you go, Tyrone and Dublin, highest scoring half, second half 5-6 with Paddy Power. So that's it for this week's show, folks. Enjoyed the Super 8 weekend. My thanks to Paddy Ahern from our sponsors, Paddy Power. I've been David Jennings. Talk to you next week.
Check out Paddy's Rewards Club. Simply place 5 bets of £10 or more across any sport in a week, and you'll get a free £10 bet the next week. T&Cs apply. 18+. BeGambleAware.org.